This is, talking about feed-throughs, this is on the side of the Cedar Street building. This was the 5 kilowatt balance line feed-through insulators going out to the old antenna system. It's long gone. Balance line was pretty popular back in the day.
So what did they use the building for then?
The transmitters and the studios were there for a long time.
But is it still being used?
Still there. This is what it looks like today. That's the main transmitter on the right, and in the middle of the Harris transmitter is the auxiliary transmitter. Still being used.
ESPN radio now, right?
As a transmitter site, ESPN radio.
But where are they transmitting to? Where's the antennas?
There, right behind the building. There's two 100 and,
big towers.
yeah.
Still using those towers.
Yeah, the towers are in bad shape.
Yeah, they haven't been painted, and they were formerly lighted.
Yeah, they got permission to turn the lights off because they're so low, but the painting they need to do.
Did they have a Continental transmitter too?
Yeah, they have.
Which one is that? The middle
It's
one?
not that they got rid of that.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
Yeah, because that was installed like in 1980.
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Now here's some really old audio from the early 60s from WKNB.
Welcome to the Rural Hour, presented every evening, Monday through Saturday. These programs are designed especially for rural Connecticut listeners. If these broadcasts meet with your favor, we would appreciate receiving a card from you. And now, here is your farm commentator, Irwin H. Portal.
Good evening, folks. And we have a real treat for you tonight. We have a group of boys here that are working on the tobacco camps here in the Connecticut Valley. This program is sponsored by the Connecticut Council of Churches, which has been doing a lot of work with those boys during the summer. And we have Levington E. Smith of Washington, D.C., who is musical director for the camps. And Mr. Smith, would you take over now and let us have Swing Low, Sweet Chariot?
Swing low, sweet chariot.
Even in the 60s, stations did a lot of live broadcasts. It was easier that way than playing LPs in some ways. You know, back in the 20s and 30s, stations had their own orchestras, their own organists, their own pianists. Every studio had a piano in it. Let's jump to another audio clip here. This is from the early 60s. It's from an album, a big 16-inch album, but before tape, or before stations embraced tape, they had their own cutting lathes, so they'd record commercials on vinyl. This was from WCCC, early 60s, and it's an ad for something called the Double E. Now, they recorded their own ads. We're trying to figure out what the product was. This was actually kind of fascinating.
It may be 3,000 odd miles across the United States, but near or far, here or there, everyone will be singing the praises of Double E. News travels fast, and even though the Double E will concern most people in the Hartford area, they'll be telling their friends in California about it. Double E is coming soon. As sturdy as a tree and sometimes even free, I think you'll want to see and hear the great big Double E. Well, man alive and gosh by gee, I hope there isn't any fee to see and hear the Double E. Coming soon.
So we have no idea what that was.
It's a degree you can get at the University of Hartford.
Right. The radio stations were often located in hotels. I couldn't figure out why. It seemed to be a weird match, but I found out, an old timer told me, oh, because they could barter radio advertising for space in the hotel. So WCCC was in the basement, or as Bill Savage, who owned the station, said, the lower mezzanine level. The Hotel Bond, if you know Hartford, to the right of that is Black Eyed Sally's, right there in downtown Hartford. So it's interesting, lower mezzanine level. This is the program director, Joe Durand, WCCC. This is from the 1947 booklet, right when they went on the air. Promotion was key, of course, and this was the Women's Hour. Their transmitter was on South Quaker Lane in West Hartford from 1947 until 1990, when they had to move. But there were call letters at the top, WCCC, of course, originally, and then for about 20 years it said WCC, which some have been recognized as an old coastal station down in Chatham, North Carolina. It's kind of an inside joke there. But they actually had studios in this building, but we don't think they ever used them. All the indications show that they started from the Hotel Bond. That's their first transmitter, which was there when I started working there in 1980, a Westinghouse, GE 500 watt. It was a lot bigger. It was the size of 2 refrigerators. It doesn't do justice to the picture.
Are they still 500 watts today?
Yeah, 490 to be precise. They're 500 watts. They were all requests for a while, as we talked about. And of course, Howard Stern got his start at CCC, and we found his paycheck not that long ago. And he says in his movie, in his book, that he quit over a $15 a week raise. So he was making $200 a week. Yeah. He wanted $215, and Cy Dresner, the owner, who had a reputation for being a little bit of a cheapskate, Said no way, so Howard left. It turned out that shows he was making $200 a week.
I still think he's not worth that much.
No. And promotions, we talked about promotions with the colored vinyl. CCC has had a fleet of these H1 Hummers for a while. You know, ugly, conspicuous consumption, but boy, they're rolling billboards with a rock and roll audience. They're really, really popular. Big D, another prominent station in Hartford. In fact, it goes down the annals of U.S. history as one of the top 40 stations that broke the European and the British music into the American music scene back in the 60s. The joke is, I recognize Dick Robinson, but who are those guys with him? Of course, it's the Stones. The takeoff on the Floyd, who's that up there with Floyd joke. So pretty amazing, young Dick Robinson with the Stones in DRC conference room. One amazing billboards. It was actually a three-dimensional billboard. Those were not actors; they were mannequins that were placed up there painting or defacing the sign. You know, complete with spilled paint on the bottom and stuff. That was on the side of I think 91 or the Berlin Turnpike. I forget which. Promotion's key. There are no other station that I know of that had their own ski daddler, as they call it, complete with two-way radio in the lower left-hand corner, a little lunchbox radio for live broadcasts. Of course, they were at 750 Main Street for many, many years on the top floor. That picture got shrunk down for some reason on the formatting there. It's not quite that squat. And that's just a funny... we were talking earlier with some of the guys here. W1XPW was one of the first FM stations in the country, and it was the first licensed commercial station in the U.S. And it's up in West Peak and Meriden, and it is that station. There's a big argument in the community about it, in the broadcast community, about whether that station is WDRC now, or that station is WHCN now. And I say, as an amateur historian who's researched it, that it is definitively WHCN, because WDRC was licensed for the first time in 1959. This license has been continuously held. W1XPW became WHCN. For a short period of time in the 50s, they called themselves WDRC. That's where the confusion comes from. But it's interesting. There's them 1939 photo. That's the same place taken last summer. Is that the same building? I couldn't get the exact angle because I didn't have the picture with me actually, but I did pretty good from memory. And that pole right in front, that's the original Armstrong pole. Armstrong had his 2-bay FM antenna on the low band FM around 42 megahertz. Pole's still standing after all those years, and they have steel over the roof because of ice. It's a slate roof, which was a bad idea. It lasted 70 or 80 years, but the ice coming off the towers tends to damage it. So they put steel on top of the roof. Meriden, West Peak and Meriden, it's 6 other FMs that operate from up there. How am I doing time-wise? Am I okay?
Yeah. Southington Amateur Radio Club's repeaters are up there too.
It's a great site.
In that building.
They picked Meriden. The argument goes, some people say because it's halfway between Hartford and New Haven, that's more or less true. It's about halfway. It's the highest spot, about halfway, that was populated at the time. But really they were trying to relay from Armstrong's Tower in Alpine, New Jersey up to Boston. And it was kind of halfway between those two sites.
Which is why Armstrong built the tower there.
And coincidentally, it covers Hartford and New Haven pretty well. But Quadraphonic FM, Quad Rock, never went anywhere. Another promotional thing, this was the first painted bus I ever saw. I'm not saying it's the first in the country or first in the state, but I worked for HCN at the time, and they were really proud of it because it was the first one. Now they're all painted, but it's pretty cool. Speaking of WWH earlier, Clark Schmidt, and that's the first general manager and the founder of WWH. And I've got some audio of his first show on the first day they went on the air. This is actually right after the sign-on, which was a little bit boring because it was I was authorized by the FCC. This is what Clark.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 15th day of July, 1968. The time is 6:01, and this is WWUH-FM, broadcasting in stereo from the University of Hartford at 91.3 on everyone's dial. Clark Smith along until 6:45, at which time we proudly present Hartford Tonight, a program designed to help the greater Hartford area attain its full potential in the areas of culture, entertainment, and interest. WWUH constantly operating in the public's interest, convenience, and necessity. We continue. What would be more apropos for a very first broadcast but the chairman of the board himself? We call on Mr. Francis Albert Sinatra with his famous song entitled Strangers in the Night.
You know, John, I think, if I remember right, there was a hand-built audio mixer that we built.
Yeah, that's something.
John?
Yes.
Just one thing for everybody in the room that's a ham, that W1XPW, John B. from our Hamfest has that call sign for his club.
Does he really? That's great.
Just looked it up just now. I'm like, wow. That sounded familiar. I'm like, no, it's familiar.
Another audio clip here, and I actually bleeped something out in this one. This is one of the a clip with some 4-letter words in it. I thought there might be some kids in the room, and I don't know what your sensibilities are, but I bleeped it out. I was chief engineer at WDRC at the time. I was sitting in my office, 1984, I think. And Kathy Weiler, who recently finished up her career over at WRCH, like 100.5, the top-notch newscaster, broadcaster, absolutely professional, wonderful person. She made the blooper of the century, and I almost fell off. I think I did fall off my stool when I heard this at the workbench. When you make a mistake in radio, 99.9% of the time, you should continue on. Don't draw attention to it. If you play the wrong song, unless it's a horrible song, let it go. Half the audience still like it. Don't stop it and say, oh, I played the wrong song. Just let it go. That's the rule in broadcasting. Well, she didn't follow the rule. And there's 2 4-letter words. The second one I bleeped because the first one, whatever. You'll know what she's talking about.
In the Sammy Davis Jr. Greater Hartford Open. Only a few holes into play. Our previous CHO winners, Curtis Strange, Tim Norris, and Hubert Green, while Masters champion Ben Crenshaw and U.S. Open winner Foxy Zeller have yet to tee off. Fuzzy Zeller. I say. The Dow Jones Industrials at 11:03.58 are up with 63. And the forecast, increasing cloudiness tonight, a chance of rain after midnight, the low 55. Rain tomorrow, around 70. Right now, 84 degrees at WDRC.
We may not be able to own as many radio stations as we want after that one. We'll have to oh my God.
Did I say you don't ever repeat it? That was priceless. She gave me permission to air that, to play that for you guys. Some other stations in the area, WEXT was one of the big country stations in the country for a while. 1550 had an ad campaign, again, all about promotions and stuff. John Epler, I can't think of John's call letters, but John, who used to be involved with, is still involved with ham radio in Hartford, was chief engineer there for years.
Used to be at UH. Still at CCTV?
Yes, exactly. The 1550 doesn't win the prize for the most call letters. Boy, they've had a lot of call letters over the years, as you can see. They were talk radio briefly, and they were most recently Radio Disney. Currently, they're off the air pending a sale to a Christian group.
Where are they located? Where's their facility?
Studios in Manchester, and the transmitters on Mucko Road in Bloomfield. Who recognizes that? It's an artist's conception. Yeah, artist's conception of the Radio Towers Park. Kind of neat. There was a postcard that they sent me. I was at DXers. That's actually the first station that I ever saw. My dad took me over there in 1968. It was amazing because I saw 2 things that I'd never seen before. One was a digital readout. They had a Nixie 2 digital frequency readout, which, this was before we all had 4-function calculators, at least I did. And they also had an automation system. The FM was totally automated with a bunch of reel-to-reel tapes and a carousel cart machine. And to a young kid, or a young teen, seeing an automation system that, before we had computers, that actually told the time every minute was pretty amazing. It was all on tape. Somebody had to record 20 after the hour, 21 after the hour. And this is the same building today with the 910 towers behind it. Actually, that's not contemporary, but it's almost much more recent. Another quadraphonic ad. WRCH ran quad for a while. It's kind of like surround sound, isn't it? But no middle channel, no subwoofer. So HD radio, I think that's going to go the way quad did, but maybe that's just me.
I hope not.
Yeah, I got one.
How many here has got HD radio? And you guys are really technically inclined too, so that's pretty sad as far as, I think if this was a group of lay people, we'd be lucky if we had one person in this room that had HD radio. That's the problem. Not enough out there. There you go, Al. WTHT.
I did transmitter duty up there.
Tell us about it. The FM had the antenna on top of the pipeline tower.
I used to take my 606, 807 rig up there when I was on transmitter duty at night.
And throw a dipole up in the tree on 20 meters. I worked the world from there. CW, 20 meters.
Wow. So AM and FM station owned by the Hartford Times, which the Hartford Times itself didn't survive. But the radio station disappeared 20 years plus before the newspaper did. The AM, eventually the frequency was reused as 1230 as WINF in Manchester, but the FM was never taken over again.